Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies delivered in the amount of time it takes to clean up your living room so you can crash on the couch with your favorite book, or drive out to meet a friend for a glass of wine at the end of a busy day. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm glad to welcome you to episode 27, in which I have the pleasure of interviewing Jenna Copper, often known online as Doc Cop, all about a powerful discussion strategy her students love. Jenna Copper is many things to many people. She is a full-time high school English teacher, teaching the senior English classes at her school and advising the senior class with her husband, who teaches history there. She is also an adjunct college professor in charge of the online English program for the university where she got her PhD. She is a literary theory pro, master grader, and all-around expert English teacher. She also has 2 adorable young daughters. I don't know where she finds the time to sleep at night, but she also fits in running an amazing teacher Instagram profile and website. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing Jenna share her teaching ideas today, and I'm already planning to have her back next year because there was so much more we could have talked about. Today's show is brought to you by the Phooey on February ELA Teachers Club. If you ever feel like February is 3 times longer than any other month, you're ready to join this free club and make it fun again. Participate in creative classroom challenges, get in on great giveaways, and fill your February with inspiration. You can learn more and sign up by going to bit.ly/SaveMeFromFebruary. I'm so excited to welcome Jenna Copper from Doc Cop Teaching to the show. She's taking time out from a super busy schedule as a high school teacher, college professor, and mom to 2 beautiful young daughters to talk to us about a fabulous idea for amping up discussion engagement. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jenna.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Yay. Can you tell me a little bit in your own words about what you do and how you got here to where you are now?
Sure. I started out as a high school English teacher in a local school district. Actually, it's the local school district in the same town that I graduated from at college. And I started teaching there. During my first year of teaching, I decided that I wanted to go back to school to earn my PhD. So I took that first whole year of teaching to learn how to be a teacher. We know what that first year is like.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Of course. Yeah. And I applied to different programs and I did some research to try to figure out what would be the best program for me. So I found a program it's a PhD in education. And I worked on that for 3 years. So by the end of my 4th year of teaching, I earned my doctorate. And also we had our first daughter. So the timing was actually really exciting because I defended my dissertation when I was 6 months pregnant. Wow. So it was actually perfect timing. And I graduated with my PhD, and shortly after I was hired as an adjunct professor in the English department at the university that I graduated from. And so since then, I have been teaching high school English, and I have been teaching part-time at the university. I've been teaching around 7 courses a year throughout the entire school year, and that includes usually a course or 2 over the summer as well. And I am currently teaching at a different high school position. A few years ago, I was hired at my local high school where my husband is also a teacher. He teaches the senior government courses, and I teach the senior English courses as well as the AP courses. And we are the senior class advisors together.
Oh my gosh, you guys must be legendary.
Yes, it is. It is definitely a unique situation for our district, but it has been phenomenal. It is a lot of fun. So we have a lot of fun, and then I get to teach college on the side. So that's my background. It's been a really fun journey to get to this point, and I feel like I'm finally. I've been teaching for 9 years, and I've been teaching college now going on 4. So I feel like I am in a good place. I know what I'm doing in both aspects. So it's been a good situation.
You have such an amazing dual perspective, having taught high school and having taught college, and then having your husband on the flip side in the humanities curriculum. I mean, there's so much amazing interdisciplinary conversations that must happen around your dinner table.
I feel every single day that I learn something new. And it's not just from my husband, but that is a huge aspect, especially when current events are happening and my students are writing about current events. I have a resource that is just untapped. I get to learn so many things all the time. So it is a great household for questioning and learning, and our kids seem to be doing pretty good with that too.
Yeah, they're going to grow up with an amazing talent in the humanities. I can't wait to see them become
I hope so.
president or start some kind of incredible talk show.
Well, our oldest wants to be a teacher, Dr. Mommy, when she grows up. So
sweet.
We'll see how that goes.
So I especially am excited to talk to you today about a great idea you have for creating an engaging discussion. I think so many English teachers struggle to keep discussion fresh and to keep it exciting, keep students engaged. And so before we jump into it, I just wanted to ask you what discussions were like for you, thinking back to your own high school experience, and what did you take out of that as you left high school? What did you think of your own experience?
That is a great question. And it's one that I probably haven't thought of enough until you asked me that today, because I had a great middle school, high school educational career, if you can call it that. I absolutely loved going to school. I loved learning. I really admired my teachers for the most part. And I wanted to emulate them. I think that's probably one major reason that I wanted to become a teacher. But reflecting back on it, there were definitely things I learned what to do and then also what not to do. Anything that made me feel self-conscious about speaking out was something that really stuck with me. In fact, I remember that I had a teacher, an English teacher, who asked us to really think about the words that we were choosing when we were speaking, which can be a great skill. But if you accidentally said a word that was on the no-no list, your name got written on the board and you got put in the like jail. So the main word that we weren't supposed to say was the filler like.
Right.
And I remember being so self-conscious that if I raised my hand and said the word like unintentionally, and I was probably more likely to say it just because I was thinking about it,
right.
That really made me nervous. And so as somebody who in class was an extrovert and I really did like raising my hand and offering my opinion, I liked working in groups and I liked talking and working with people. That is something that I realized I do not want to do to my students. So that is one thing that anything that makes students feel self-conscious, and whether that is working in a big group. I realize that I have a different experience than other people, and discussions don't just have to happen in big groups. There's other ways that you can participate in a discussion, and that's something that I try to bring to the classroom. So I really did have a great experience in high school, and especially in college, where some of these things were really fostered for me. It has really helped my classroom and how I kind of established this culture for discussions where students don't have to feel self-conscious.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into this technique that I'm excited to ask you about today. So I first read about it on your website a while ago, and I was just so excited about it. So you do these panel discussions where the audience gets to take the role of tweeters. Can you tell us a little bit about the basic concept?
Sure. I got this idea from watching a show on HBO. It's called Real Time with Bill Maher. And essentially, it's a panel discussion where there's a moderator, and then there are several guests, and they discuss topics that are related to politics. The audience is always very engaged, and even though they aren't active participants as far as we would normally think of participating in the discussion by speaking, they are often involved through Twitter. And so they use hashtags to chat and to contribute to the conversation that way. So I was trying to think of a way that I could get my students all engaged in a discussion. And I thought this could be a great tool for not only accountability, but to give students who are maybe more introverted an opportunity to participate but not feel like they're on stage. So that's where the idea came from. The way that it works is that I try to give students a set of topics before the discussion. These topics will give students time to review them. And then when they come back to class, they'll feel more prepared and more likely to be able to discuss because they've had a preview of the topics that we're going to be talking about. And then I simply have a few students at a time come to our panel, and I simply put desks together in the front of the room. And I act as the moderator for the first few that we do in class, and we simply have a discussion. And it's very nice because students are more likely to participate in this small group, even though it's a whole class discussion and that the rest of the class is listening and they are quote tweeting. Now, obviously, we're not going to use Twitter for this, although you might be able to work that out some way. But as far as our filters go, Twitter is not going to work on our Wi-Fi at school.
Yeah.
So we use a secure backchannel chat, and the students basically participate in this chat. And I actually project the chat onto my smart board so that we can see. Yeah, it's great because as the panel and as the moderator, we can see what the students are saying. And sometimes we'll even refer to maybe a question that they asked, or we'll see something that came up that was really insightful, and we'll mention that as well. And it's a really great process. So we can kind of rotate through the panel. Different students will come in or come out after they've participated several times. And essentially what I have found is that not only do students enjoy it, but that it's a great way for students to practice several communication skills. So of course, they are in the back as audience members, listening intently, commenting through their quote tweets. And then the students who are in the panel are more likely to volunteer because there are only, usually I have between 4 and 5 of us up there. So it's a quote small group discussion. And it's a really great environment. The class period goes so quickly, and I'm always so interested to scroll back through the back channel chat after our discussion. And I'm usually amazed at all of the insights that come up that we can then talk about the next day and maybe a whole group discussion or as part of a reflective writing assignment.
There are so many things I love about this. One of the things I love about it is that in every class I've ever taught, I've had several students, if not the majority of students, who are English language learners. And I think when they have a chance to consider the topics in advance, they're so much more comfortable jumping in. And that's generalization, but it's something that I've noticed that it's helpful to have a little more time to think, and then to bring it into that smaller group, then there's just more of a chance. You don't have to fight through the voices as much when you want to participate. And so they have everybody who's maybe a little quieter or shyer or struggling with language, just has a more central role to play. And I love that.
Yeah, it's been a great experience as far as student feedback goes as well. I always take time to get feedback from students, whether it be in a small group setting where I'll ask them, so what did you think about that? What can we do? What can we improve? Or maybe I'll give them an anonymous survey so that they can feel comfortable giving me honest answers. And this is one of those activities that overwhelmingly has positive feelings from all different kinds of students. They all seem to really enjoy it, and they all comment how fast the class period goes. So I know that they're having fun.
They're in the zone.
If you can call it. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I like the idea of doing feedback regularly with students too. I mean, everybody does their year-end or midterm evaluations, but giving them the agency that they can tell you what they like and what they don't like in class, that seems really valuable.
I try to make it seem special. And so I'll say, we're going to have a short focus group session today. And I'm going to ask you some questions based on what we did this week or something like that. And it seems more official to them. But generally, I do not have a problem with high schoolers speaking up. They usually are pretty good about giving their opinions.
Agreed. Let me ask you, so I feel like a lot of this is very doable. You pull the desk together, you give them some topics, you explain the the basics. I think something that teachers might not be sure how to get set up is this back chat. I know you use the website Today's Meet to help students get together. Can you explain that a little bit?
It's extraordinarily easy to set up. It is essentially a website that you go to and you sign up for it as the teacher. You'll give students an access code and they will simply use a device. So our school is one-to-one with Chromebooks, but students can also use a smartphone, or you could even pair students up. If you only have maybe 5 devices in your classroom, you could certainly pair students up and have them passing the devices around.
Nice.
I've found that it's not really too much of a distraction. I've done this in the past, and the students are engaged, they're having fun, they're paying attention. It's okay to have them kind of passing the things around. It seems to work fine that way as well. So once you have the channel set up through this website, and it's extremely straightforward, the directions are very, very easy.
Perfect.
But you'll essentially sign up for the account, call your back channel a name. I'll call it maybe Macbeth discussion. And the students join when they come to class. They will be able to chat through this back channel discussion. And the best part is you can set the privacy so that it is a private discussion. You don't have to worry about somebody else joining it. That is right, exactly. Because you obviously you never know when you think of like a chat room or a discussion board.
True.
It can be kind of scary. So this is a completely safe way to do it. And what I like about it is that it is a synchronous discussion. So on, let's say, Google Classroom or on Blackboard, I can set up discussion boards, but it's going to set up threads. Backchannel chat actually functions in real time. So the discussion is taking place just like it would on Twitter. So as soon as you press enter, your statement is going right into the chat room, followed by the next student, and back and forth. And so it's a really fun thing to look at afterwards. When the discussion is over and the students click the X button and log out, they lose access to the discussion board. But as the teacher, you can set the duration for how long you'd like to keep the channel open so that you can go back through and look at what students were writing and maybe even talk about it the next day. So it's a very easy process to set up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that you can use it for the duration. You know, if they've come up with really interesting comments, those can turn into writing prompts. They can turn into reflective discussion the next day. That's really cool. And it's nice that it's more like a live discussion that you could have in class out loud, you know, that it doesn't turn into these sort of Facebook threads.
One thing I should add is that, and sometimes I take this for granted because my students are used to doing this now, but the very first time that we did this, I made certain to set the expectations very, very clearly. And it also helps to sometimes have it in writing as well. Yeah. But set the expectations very clearly for how we're going to participate in this. Obviously, there are some really bad behaviors that students can come into contact with on social media, like Twitter.
Right.
And so I just make it very clear that this is an educational, formal forum, and that I expect formal behavior, and we kind of go through what is acceptable and what would not be acceptable, because students might get somewhat brave in the back channel chat because there is a discussion board going, or a live discussion going on during the panel. We're not looking at everything they're saying at the time, and I think this is a really good opportunity to talk about what you say will be viewed after, just like it can be on social media or in, let's say, a shared Google Doc or any of these other forms. So there's a lot that can really be learned here, even outside from the discussion.
Yeah, that's a nice little teachable moment. What you say in a discussion will be there for the duration. Yeah. I like that. And that's a really important point to talk about that up front and not let students embarrass themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you do this like once a week, once a month? How do you vary it with some of your other favorite forms of discussion?
Well, this type of discussion would definitely be more formal and planned.
Yeah.
You know, in a typical week, we have discussions every single day in different forms. Maybe we'll break out into small group discussions or partner discussions that will lead into a whole class discussion. But those tend to be very informal, and they tend to be based more on a reader response type of discussion.
Sure.
When we decide to have something more formal, that's when we'll pull out something like a panel discussion or a Socratic seminar or a fishbowl discussion. And for those type of discussions, I use those to really key in on the objective assessments. So maybe I am searching or I'm trying to determine how well my students understood multiple perspectives in Macbeth. So I'll come up with a list of ideas that a list of topics that I'd like the students to think about and research. And they'll have time to do that, like we said, out of class.
Mm-hmm.
And then the discussion is going to be more formal because it's a guided discussion based on those topics that align to my objectives. So this is a much more formal type of discussion because I've really planned where the discussion is going. Now, that doesn't mean that every discussion is going to be perfect or that it's always going to be very structured, but at the same time, there is some sort of guide to it. So I would say that it really depends on the class, but we at least have one of these types of discussions per unit. And sometimes it's even more. I know my AP Lang class, once we get into our thematic units, we do them maybe once a week.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I like the balance between the informal, formal. I think that's something a lot of teachers get into, but without really thinking about it. It's just how it happens. But when you start to think about the skills that you're giving students and the types of learning opportunities you're giving them, it's nice. It's nice to be really intentional about it like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to tell us all about this amazing form of discussion. I really like it. I think a lot of teachers out there are going to enjoy trying it out.
Oh, well, I look forward to listening back on this podcast. I'm so impressed by all that you do. So I'm really thankful that you had me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Where can teachers go when they want to learn more about you and your work? What are some of your favorite platforms out there?
There's one place to find me daily, and that is on Instagram. You can find me at Doc Cop Teaching, and my nickname is Doc Cop, so that's where the title comes from. Yes. Some people often ask, where does that come from? So you can find me daily on Instagram at Doc Cop Teaching, and then I also have a blog, doccopteaching.com, and that is where my formal blog posts where you'll find a lot of this information as well as a more detailed post on some of the intricacies of this particular panel discussion. So you can find all of that if you search for me, and we can become friends. I love going out and meeting new people to come up with new ideas. I think that collaboration in education is so important.
I'm with you. And I love your Instagram account and I love your website. And I'm going to link both. And especially I'll make an extra big link for the post that you did about this specific strategy. So teachers, if you want to get in there, you can see it. You can see the play-by-play as Jenna laid it out for you. And I think she also has a wonderful free download there in the post where you can get some helpful just handouts and guidelines for making this discussion really successful. So I'll be sure to link that in the show notes today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out the show notes for all the links we talked about in today's show, including the one to Jenna's blog post and free resources to help you get started with this discussion forum, just head to www.nowsparkcreativity.com and click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. Next week, John Spencer of the Creative Classroom podcast and YouTube channel will be on the show, so be sure to subscribe on your listening platform of choice so you don't miss out. The Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators. Podcasts by educators. For more podcast recommendations, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.